Welcome to Lesson 88 in Saxon Algebra 1, 3rd edition. This lesson is on quadratic equations and then how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. Alright, and I found this picture and I thought that there was a good explanation. When you have the first term is something x squared, then it's going to be a quadratic equation. Okay, if this is x to the third, it is not going to be quadratic. It has to start with that x squared. Alright, the formula or the base form for a quadratic equation is a x squared plus bc plus c equals 0. Okay. Here I have x squared plus 4x plus 1 equals 0. These are all quadratic equations. Okay, so here is our strategy for solving quadratic equations by factoring. I would like for you to copy this in your notebook, those of you who did classes in class with me and keep a notebook. I want you to write down these 5 steps. The first thing in our strategy is to write the equation with 0 on the right-hand side. That's very important. It has to be. Then we factor what's on the left-hand side. We then use the zero factor property, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. I'm going to show you how it works, to set each factor equal to 0. Solve the simpler equations and then check the answers in the original equation. Okay, so in quadratic equations, you're always going to have 2 answers. Okay, x can be this or it can be this. It can't be both, okay, but it can be either one to get a 0 here, and that's the zero factor theorem, is that we have to get our answer to equal 0. So obviously when I factor, if you imagine the 1 there, I know that it's going to be 3 and 2. Negative 3 would give us a negative 1, so negative 3, positive 2. So whatever it factors to, then the opposite of this is going to equal 0. So x would equal 3 to make it equal 0. And here, since it's positive 2, we would have to have negative 2 to make it equal 0. And that really is all there is to factoring the quadratic. Alright, so example 1, this comes from your book, says to use the factor method to find the roots of x squared minus 18 equals 3x. Alright, well you can certainly see that even though this starts with x squared, it is not in the proper format. So we're going to move this 3x to the other side and it becomes negative 3x. So we have x squared minus 3x minus 18, and then add this equals 0. Then we're going to factor, and our factors are 6 and 3, negative 6, positive 3. So our answer here would have to be negative 3, and here would have to be positive 6. So our answer is either negative 3 or positive 6. Alright, again, this one doesn't look very much like a quadratic at all, but we have 4x squared minus 25, and this should stick out to you as, oh, that's a perfect square. But we have to put the equals 0 on the end, and we know to factor a perfect square we would have 2x plus 5 and then 2x minus 5. So here comes step 4 in the strategy that we were talking about, solve the simpler equations. So we know what 2x is, but we have to find out what x is. So we subtract 5 from both sides and we get 2x equals negative 5. Divide by 2 on both sides, and so x here equals negative 5 over 2, and here it would have to equal positive 5 over 2 to get each one of these to equal 0. All right, in this third example, 3x squared minus 6x equals 9. Well, this 9 is going to have to come over here, and we're going to have to insert a 0 here. So if it's positive, I need to subtract, and it comes over here and becomes negative 9. Now this is what I'm going to factor, and you need to note, it's really important, remember greatest common factor, you have to factor that out. Every one of these have 3 in common. So if I take the 3 out, I'm left with x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Then I'm going to factor, and I know that my factors are negative 3 and positive 1. Then I've got to get rid of this 3 here. So I'm going to have to divide by 3. When I do that, I get 1 here, which is what I needed, and I still have 0 here because this is still going to be 0. So if it's x minus 3x plus 1, then my answer is going to be the opposite, positive 3 and negative 1. All right, let's do a practice problem or two. Okay, so here we're going to need to get this in correct format. So we're going to say x squared. We're going to move this so it's going to become plus 5x. And when we move this, it'll be negative 24, and then we're going to add our equals 0. Then we're going to factor this. And the factors of 24 that could equal 5 would be 8 and 3. I would need the 8 to be positive so that I could have a positive 5 when I add those. Alright, so then my answer here would have to be negative 8, and here would have to be positive 3. So those are my answers for that. Alright, over here, these are all jumbled up, but we're going to say x squared plus 8x, because this is going to move, minus 48 is equal to 0. Then I factor x and x. I know I'm going to have a positive and a negative. Now, the factors of 48 that could possibly give me 8. Well, that would be 12 and 4. 4 times 12. Because if I have positive 12 and negative 4, then and I add those, I'm going to get positive 8. So here, what would x have to be to equal 0? It would have to be negative 12. And in this one, it would have to be positive 4. So that is my answer. Easy peasy. Good job. I'll see you back next time for lesson 89.